I gave everything to our family business. Every ounce of my time, energy, and hope was poured into those walls, those ledgers, and those contracts. When my father handed me the keys, the legacy of generations, I didn't hesitate. This was more than a company, it was our identity, our pride, our history. I was determined to protect it, to grow it, to make it thrive again after years of decline. But what I didn't expect was betrayal so deep that it felt like the ground beneath me had shattered, leaving me watching, helpless, as everything crumbled before my eyes. From the beginning, it was a struggle. The economy was shifting, competitors were ruthless, and internal problems from years past had left scars I couldn't just erase overnight. I spent sleepless nights poring over budgets, renegotiating contracts, meeting with clients, and trying to inspire a weary team. I convinced myself that if I could just hold on a little longer, make the right moves, the business would bounce back. But the more I tried, the more fragile things seemed to become. Behind closed doors, though, the reality was darker. I trusted my business partner, my own cousin, implicitly. We grew up together, shared family dinners, celebrated milestones side by side. But as the pressure mounted, cracks started to show. At first, it was subtle missed meetings, evasive answers about finances, little decisions made without consulting me. I chalked it up to stress, fatigue, the weight of responsibility. I told myself to be patient, to trust the bond we had. I was wrong. One afternoon, I stumbled upon a series of documents, a contract signed without my knowledge, funds siphoned off into accounts I'd never heard of. Deals made with competitors who had no business inside our walls. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. The cousin I trusted had been quietly dismantling the business from the inside. Confrontation was inevitable. When I finally confronted him, his face was cold and apologetic. He said he had no choice, that the business was doomed, and he was trying to save what he could for himself. The words cut deeper than any loss. It wasn't just about money or contracts, it was about trust shattered, a legacy tarnished. In the weeks that followed, everything spiraled out of control. Clients pulled away, rumors spread, employees left, and debts mounted. I tried to hold the pieces together, but it was like trying to catch water with my bare hands. The business I'd sworn to protect was falling apart, and I was powerless to stop it. The worst part wasn't the loss of the company, it was the loss of faith. In my family, in my judgment, in the future I'd imagined. I questioned every decision, every relationship, every hope. The weight of failure crushed me, and I found myself isolated, haunted by what could have been. But amidst the rubble, something began to stir of a quiet resolve. I realized that while the business might be gone, I wasn't. The betrayal had broken my trust, but it hadn't broken my spirit. I started to rebuild, not just for myself, but for the family and the community that had depended on us for so long. I learned to be cautious, to verify, to question, but also to forgive, to accept, and to move forward. The road ahead was uncertain, scarred by pain and loss, but it was mine to walk. And this time, I would walk it with eyes wide open. After discovering the betrayal, the atmosphere in the office shifted dramatically. I became hyper-aware of every conversation, every whispered comment behind my back. The warmth I once felt from the team was replaced by tension and suspicion. People I'd counted on started avoiding me, and the weight of loneliness pressed down harder than the crushing financial losses. The days blurred together. I worked around the clock, determined to salvage what I could. I called emergency meetings, laid out damage control plans, and tried to rally the fractured team. But it was like trying to rebuild a house while the foundation was sinking beneath me. Creditors called more frequently, their patience running thin. Vendors stopped extending terms, and customers, wary of instability, began seeking alternatives. The steady stream of income slowed to a trickle, and every new problem felt like another brick on my shoulders. Family gatherings, once a source of comfort, turned cold. My cousin avoided eye contact, family members took sides quietly, and the legacy we were supposed to protect was now a source of shame. The betrayal wasn't just in the boardroom, it had poisoned our entire family dynamic. At night, When the office lights finally dimmed and I sat alone staring at spreadsheets filled with red numbers, the weight of it all felt unbearable. I questioned whether I had been naive, whether my trust had blinded me. I asked myself what I could have done differently, where I'd failed. But in the darkest moments, small flickers of hope emerged. Some longtime employees, loyal despite the chaos, stood by me. A few clients reached out with words of encouragement, reminding me of why I fought so hard in the first place. Those moments were fragile but precious reminders that not everything was lost. Slowly, I began to rebuild not the business as it was, but the pieces of who I was. I took a hard look at the decisions I'd made, learning from mistakes without letting them define me. I sought advice from mentors outside the family, people who could offer objective perspectives. I also faced the painful task of repairing fractured relationships. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored, especially in family. But I learned to communicate openly, to express my pain without anger, and to listen. Some bridges mended, others remained distant, but I accepted that healing takes time. Eventually, I decided to step back from the remnants of the business. Letting go was heartbreaking, but necessary. Holding on to a sinking ship only risked dragging me under. I began to explore new opportunities and not to chase the past, but to build a future. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges I never anticipated. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of control, a flicker of purpose beyond loss. Looking back, I realized that betrayal shattered more than just a business, it shattered my illusions. But in that breaking, I found clarity. I learned resilience, humility, and the importance of trust earned, not given blindly. And though I still carry the scars of what was lost, I also carry the lessons and the hope that, one day, I can build something even stronger. In the months that followed, I found myself at a crossroads. The ruins of the family business loomed large behind me, a constant reminder of what had been lost and betrayed. But the future, while uncertain, beckoned with a quiet promise. I realized that survival wasn't just about holding on to the past, it was about creating something new from the ashes. I started small. I began consulting for other small businesses in the area, using my years of experience to help others avoid the mistakes I'd made. It was humbling at first, trading the role of owner for advisor, but it gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I learned to listen more than I spoke, to understand others' struggles, and to celebrate their successes as if they were my own. Rebuilding trust with my family took longer. Some remained distant, unwilling or unable to bridge the gap. But others reached out, and those connections became lifelines. We shared difficult conversations, apologies, regrets, and tentative hopes for the future. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Personally, I had to rebuild my confidence. The betrayal had wounded more than my business, it shook my belief in my own judgment and integrity. Therapy helped a safe space to unpack the pain and work through feelings of anger, guilt, and failure. I learned that resilience isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up each time. One evening, after a long day of consulting, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. The sky was a riot of colors, oranges, purples, and pinks melting into each other. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. The past was behind me, painful but instructive. The future was ahead, uncertain but full of possibility. I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, and days when the weight of loss threatened to overwhelm me. But I also knew I wasn't alone. I had learned to lean on others, to ask for help, and to give myself grace. And slowly, step by step, I began to rebuild not just a career, but a life defined not by betrayal or failure, but by growth, strength, and hope. The business had once been the center of my world, a place where family, legacy, and ambition intertwined. Now, after the betrayal and collapse, I had to redefine who I was beyond those walls. Starting fresh wasn't just about finding a new job or project, it was about rebuilding my identity. And slowly, step by step, I began to rebuild not just a career, but a life defined not by betrayal or failure, but by growth, strength, and hope. The business had once been the center of my world, a place where family, legacy, and ambition intertwined. Now, after the betrayal and collapse, I had to redefine who I was beyond those walls. Starting fresh wasn't just about finding a new job or project, it was about rebuilding my identity. The thrill of contributing to something new, as something I could shape from the ground up, reignited a spark inside me. It wasn't the family business, but it was mine in a different way. On the home front, the scars left by the betrayal lingered. Family dinners were quieter, and while some relationships healed, others remained fractured. I learned to accept that some wounds don't fully close, but they can become manageable with time and effort. Through all this, I realized that trust, once broken, demands more than words to mend. It requires transparency, patience, and consistent action. I began to practice these not only with others but with myself, acknowledging my mistakes and forgiving my imperfections. Gradually, I found balance between work and life, past and future, loss and hope. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next with open eyes and a resilient heart. The turning point came unexpectedly one chilly autumn morning. I was attending a local business conference, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. As I navigated through the crowd, I bumped into someone from my past, a former mentor who had guided me in the early days of my career. Our conversation was brief but impactful. He reminded me that failure was not the end but a detour, a lesson disguised as a setback. That reminder stayed with me. Inspired, I decided to take a bold step, launching my own consulting firm dedicated to helping family-owned businesses avoid the pitfalls I'd endured. It was a leap into the unknown, but it felt right, turning my pain into purpose. The early days were tough, building a client base from scratch, managing finances carefully, and proving my value required every ounce of determination I had. But with each small success, a grateful client, a business saved, I felt the weight of betrayal lifting, replaced by a growing sense of fulfillment. At home, my relationship with family continued to heal slowly. I made an effort to reach out more, to listen without judgment, and to rebuild bridges where possible. Some doors remained closed, but others opened in surprising ways. Through it all, I learned that resilience isn't about never falling, it's about rising, again and again, fueled by hope and the courage to keep moving forward. The early days of the consulting firm were a test of everything I had learned, not just about business, but about myself. Each client brought unique challenges, and I had to adapt, listen deeply, and offer solutions that weren't just about numbers but about people and relationships. I saw too many families torn apart by the same kinds of betrayals and miscommunications I had endured. It was painful but also motivating. I wanted to save others from that heartbreak. One client, in particular, stood out, a small manufacturing company on the brink of collapse because of internal conflicts and financial mismanagement. Working closely with them reminded me of my own journey. I poured my experience and heart into helping them rebuild trust, streamline operations, and find common ground. Their eventual success felt like a personal victory, proof that even after devastation, recovery is possible. At home, my daughters became my greatest source of strength. Watching them grow into compassionate, resilient individuals reminded me daily of why I kept fighting. We didn't talk much about the past, the wounds were still raw, and silence sometimes felt safer. But the love was unmistakable, a steady current beneath the surface. I learned to celebrate small victories: a family dinner where laughter returned, a client's heartfelt thank you, a quiet evening where peace felt real. These moments, fragile and fleeting, became the foundation of my new life. Betrayal had shattered my world, but it hadn't broken me. Instead, it forced me to rebuild from the ground up, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And as I looked ahead, I finally felt ready to believe in the future again. The consulting firm slowly grew, but not just in numbers, it grew in meaning. Every new client was a chance to rewrite the story of a struggling business, to prevent another family from facing the pain I knew all too well. I became more than a consultant. I became a confidant, a mediator, someone who could help navigate the stormy waters that come with mixing family and business. One afternoon, a client called me with news that made my heart swell. Their company was turning around, profits rising, and relationships healing. Hearing their progress was a balm to old wounds, proof that my painful past was fueling a future where I could make a difference. But success wasn't just professional. Slowly, the walls I'd built around my heart began to soften. I started dating again, cautiously at first, and sure if I was ready to let someone in. There were missteps, moments of doubt, but also genuine connection. Each relationship taught me more about forgiveness, vulnerability, and trust, lessons I hadn't learned during the darkest days. At home, the girls flourished. Emma was finishing college with honors. Driven by a desire to build a better future for herself, Lucy's art gained local recognition. Her paintings telling stories of resilience and hope. Seeing them grow into their own lives, independent and strong, was the greatest reward of all. Though the betrayal and collapse still lingered like a shadow, it no longer defined me. I was no longer just the man who lost a family business, I was a man who rebuilt, who healed, who found purpose beyond pain. And in that, I found peace. The turning point for me wasn't just the gradual growth of the consulting firm, it was the way I began to reclaim my sense of self. For years, my identity had been so tightly bound to the family business that when it crumbled, I felt like I'd lost not only my livelihood but my very purpose. Starting over was more than launching a new career. It was rediscovering who I was beyond the failures and betrayals. The early months were humbling. I had to learn to market myself, to reach out to potential clients without the guarantee of a long-standing reputation. I attended networking events where I was often the new face, the outsider. But with every conversation, every handshake, I rebuilt confidence brick by brick. I shared my story openly, not as a tale of defeat, but as a lesson in resilience and transparency. This honesty resonated with many, especially other family-owned businesses wrestling with similar challenges. One of the most memorable clients was a third-generation family business struggling with succession issues. The father was resistant to change, the siblings were divided, and the company's future was uncertain. Their conflicts mirrored my own family's struggles, and I found myself both counselor and student in the process. Guiding them through honest conversations, helping them understand each other's fears and hopes, and aligning their vision was difficult but profoundly rewarding. Watching them come together reminded me that family and business could coexist, but only with openness and respect. At home, my daughters became a source of grounding and inspiration. Emma, always fiercely independent, was blossoming into a strong advocate for social justice. She had taken to volunteering in community programs, channeling her passion into making a tangible difference. Lucy, quieter but no less determined, poured her emotions into her art. Her paintings, full of vivid colors and raw emotion, were beginning to attract attention in local galleries. Their growth felt like a balm to the wounds left by the past, proof that despite upheaval, life could move forward. Our family dinners became sacred rituals, a chance to reconnect, to share stories, and sometimes, simply to be present with one another. We didn't speak much about the betrayal or the loss. The wounds were still healing, and sometimes silence was the safest space. But the love was there, steady and unspoken. As the consulting firm gained momentum, I started to invest more in myself. Therapy sessions helped me unpack layers of grief, anger, and self-doubt that had accumulated over the years. I learned to forgive not just my cousin, but myself. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing the betrayal, it was about freeing myself from the shackles of bitterness. This inner work was as vital as any business lesson, allowing me to approach both my work and my relationships with greater clarity and compassion. Eventually, I allowed myself to venture into new relationships. The thought of opening my heart again after such pain was daunting. There were moments of hesitation, fear of being vulnerable, and the lingering question of whether I was ready to trust someone new. But I met a few kind souls who taught me that love, like business, required risk, patience, and honesty. These connections didn't erase the past, but they enriched my present, showing me that joy and companionship were still possible. Through all these changes, I held onto a core belief that failure and betrayal, while devastating, need not be the final chapter. They can be catalysts for growth, for deeper understanding, and for forging a path that is authentically one's own. Years after the collapse, I stood at a local business awards ceremony to accept recognition for the consulting firm's impact on the community. Looking out at the crowd, I felt a mix of pride and humility. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with heartbreak and hard lessons. But standing there, I saw not just the scars but the strength born from them. The past would always be part of me, a reminder of what was lost and what was gained. And as I moved forward, I carried with me the knowledge that even in the face of betrayal and ruin, it's possible to rebuild, to heal, and to thrive.